Have you ever been in that like in between phase where you feel like you're losing friends and things are falling apart and you're pretty much losing yourself too? In this episode, we're talking about what I call the purgatory phase of growth. And this is the phase where you're in between heaven. Well, that's what I think it's a Catholic religion that like calls purgatory the in between of heaven and earth. And so I feel like that's where I'm at. And so I'm talking about this purgatory phase, not from a standpoint of like I've been there, done that, more of like I'm here and I'm drowning. No, but like more like I'm here and I want to talk about it while I'm here in this lonely phase and like this period of purgatory. Because sometimes when we've made it, we forget what this feels like and we forget to relate to it. And you're just like, go, you got it. It's going to get better. But being in the middle and talking about it in the middle, it's going to be good to look back on, and it's going to be better for me to relate for anybody else who's in this space. It's lonely. There's a lot of mourning in this phase, and there's a lot of losing people, yourself and others. And I think it's just good for us to talk about it so you're not lonely in this. So let's understand the purgatory phase. This is the phase. It's hard because it's where you are not who you used to be, but you're also not where you want to be. And in this back end of this phase, you have outgrown some of your friends, and some of your friends are not willing to do these changes that you're doing, or they don't understand why you're doing these things. And so you lose some friendships for sure. And then you're not quite in a place where you can make friends in the new phase because you're not quite there yet. And there's this middle ground that feels very much like you're on your own. And in this middle ground, nothing feels very sure. You're not sure if you're doing it right. You're not sure if you're in the right direction. You can't see the finish line, so you're not even sure if you're close or if you're going in the right direction to it. And so this phase feels like a lost phase. And a lot of people give up in this phase. And that's because the why behind why you even started this journey, or like why you even started progressing, whether like it's a career change or a you want to work on your art skills, or you're just working on your mental health. The reason why is because your why of what you started this for has to be very solid to encourage you through the phases that feel like this lonely phase. Why does growth feel so lonely? Well, growth feels lonely because no one really can help you become someone else. Like you can get advice and you can have people, I don't know, suggest different things, or you can listen to things like this podcast. But unless you are motivating yourself or finding the motivation in something that is not variable, so that's not your mood, because your mood changes every day, or it's not someone else, which you can't really control anybody else and what they do, and it's not an emotion or anything like that. It has to be something like, I want this for my future children, or I want this because I know I love art, so I'm just going to pursue that until I finally get to do art. Like unless it's a solid like goal setting, there's just like so many variables that can shift you. And so you have to know that this phase is lonely because no one else can help you through it. There's no one else who could get you through it. You can't really do anything to change things. What happens when growth costs you your relationship? Well, I hate to break it to you, but you're going to lose some friends along the way, along life, along any like journey. You're going to lose some friends, especially if you're changing from who they were friends with to another version of yourself. Because let's face it, not everyone is on the same journey as you. And that's really heartbreaking. And there's mourning to that loss. But if I'm really honest, you'll probably be surprised with some of the relationships, and you being more authentically yourself, or more free of the stressors that were affecting you in general, can also show up better in some relationships that might strengthen your relationships and make relationships that you thought were not going to last actually more deep. And it also brings in new relationships that you might not ever have expected, or like friendships in a way that you've never seen before. And I have a personal story on that. And like, I had a really hard time making friends. I'm just like not the social kind. COVID was my prime because I was indoors. I didn't have to see people and all that. And so it makes it really hard to make friends when you're like that sometimes. I also social once I'm comfortable, but getting comfortable with people is really hard for me. I have trust issues, I guess. I've had some just like sour relationships and sour like friendships and things like that have taught me to be very guarded about who I let in. And so that's made it really hard to make friends. And I thought because I moved so many schools left and right when, in my high school, in my middle school and elementary school years, like I moved around a lot. I didn't keep a lot of the same friends except for a few, very, very few. I would say like I knew people from elementary school. The people I knew from elementary school is actually 2 people, and one I married and the other one we're still in contact with. And so shout out to Kyrie. And so yeah, it was just, those are the only 2 people I've known the longest because I moved around schools, but we always ended up in the same school eventually. And because they actually were my friends and they didn't break my trust. And so those were really the only friendships. So I thought like that was it. But as a woman, you still want some girlfriends, and I didn't have that. But I started a job in, my late 20s where I met a friend that it was just kind of like, I wasn't sure if I was going to let her in because she was so kind and I wasn't used to that. And it just it blossomed into this thing that is like now of like a 6-year friendship, which is crazy to say that. Yeah, it's a 6, I had to do the math, sorry. Yeah, it's like a 6-year friendship that like our husbands get along, we get along, and we travel together, and we've had such a great time. And I know that I left a certain lifestyle right before we become friends where like our lifestyles kind of matched when we were there. We were both trying to like work through our stuff and like get to a better place. We're kind of some of like the only, at least in my family, I'm one of the only ones, and I'm asking that God keeps it this way because it's not by my doing. Okay. We're the only ones that like are in I would say my marriage is decent and healthy. And I just don't like to brag. I don't know what it is. Anyways, that we have healthy relationships in the middle of some of like spaces that don't feel like not that my siblings are not, but they're not married. And I have like a lot of divorce in my family. I'm not sure about her family, but either way, like we're like those kind of people that like we're in a place where we don't feel like we can share. Well, I didn't feel like I could share my wins too much because I felt bad for where some other people around me were at. And we found ourselves together. It felt safe. My emotions felt safe. My husband, and like who he is could be himself around most people. He can be intimidated to some people. And so I found this friendship that I was like, oh my God, I made friends as an adult and it was great. And we travel and like they love my kid. My kid loved them. It's just like the best thing ever for me. And I just love that I get to do that. And I wouldn't have done that if I wouldn't have grown out of like the partying phase and everything, because that's not where she was at when we met. And so I lost a lot before this, but I was in a very lonely space when I met her. And like, let me tell you, solid gold friends are worth more than 10,000 like friends or followers or whatever you want to call them. Whatever you think makes you feel like you're not alone, a good set of 1 to 3 gold friends is worth more than any of that, because I can count on her for anything. Like we're friends, like our husbands and stuff are friends. And like, I can text her husband and be like, hey, can you help me with this? And like, there's not going to be anything like, why are you texting my husband or anything like that. And like, I feel safe because they feel safe. And it's just, I'm telling you, gold friendships are worth everything. How do you move forward in a journey that feels endless? Well, your why has to be behind this. So, why did you start this journey? What are you striving for? What's the goal? So, your why has to be solid. Mine was one, I just wanted to be free from what I've seen my mom and her mom, and I'm sure more generations back, have lived their life as. I just wanted to live solely like myself, one, and like purely feel like I do things out of joy and want, and not because I have to or expectations or anything. I just purely wanted to be myself. And the other reason is I had a daughter, and that was really a push for me because there's nothing that teaches your kid more than your example. You could say whatever you want to them, but the way you live life and the way you do things is going to imprint in them more than anything you say to them. So that was worth everything to me. I was like, I've seen these generation of women go through so many things that I don't want my kid to go through. So I need to work through that so that she doesn't have to. So your why has to be solid, something that doesn't fluctuate, that doesn't rely on anything else, and then it's not emotionally dependent on anything else but yourself and the goal that you're reaching. So in closing, I would just like to remind you of something. If you feel lonely right now, I know this phase can feel very grueling, but just know that this lonely space, this space is for getting to know yourself better, to sit in with what is uncomfortable so that you can process it, and to make space and room for the person you're growing into. So it gets lonely, it gets empty, you process a lot, but this phase is just making room for the person you're becoming. So I want to leave you with a challenge like we do in every episode. And I want to give you this challenge to give yourself grace in this period, right? Find out what things make you uncomfortable. Why don't you want to stay on your own? Why don't you want to sit alone? Why don't you want to sit with your feelings? Why do you feel like you need more people around you for this? Where is it that you want to be at the end of this? Or maybe just write down your whys, your solid whys to get you through this lonely phase, and focus on what you're doing. Take it one step at a time. Have grace with yourself. And I hope we see you on the next episode. Bye. Thanks for hanging out with me on the Hidden Pages. If today's episode hit home for you, don't forget to subscribe or leave a review and share it with your friends who might need it too. Until next time, I'll see you in the next episode.